She found the 5-year plan in a shoebox. Ink faded, half the boxes still unchecked. It was tucked under old tax returns, the kind of thing you forget you wrote until it's staring back at you in your own handwriting. 29 years old. By 35, partner at the firm. Married. House with a porch. Kids, maybe 2. None of it was cruel. It wasn't even ambitious, really. It was just specific. A woman who believed, the way only a 29-year-old can believe, that if you wrote it down clearly enough, life would take dictation. It didn't. Nothing on that list happened the way she wrote it. Some of it happened differently. Some of it never happened at all. And some things happened that weren't on the list anywhere, weren't even in the category of things she knew to want. She sat at her kitchen table with that shoebox open, and instead of grief, she felt something stranger, something closer to a laugh caught in the chest. I'm Sarah. I'm a psychologist, a mother, and, a long time ago now, a physicist who believed professionally in the idea that if you had enough information, you could predict what happens next. I have spent a lot of my life being wrong about that. Welcome to Breathe and Begin. If you've ever found your own version of that shoebox, an old plan, an old idea of yourself, a life you were so sure you were building toward, you're in the right place today. Because I want to talk about something we don't say out loud very often, the strange, quiet grief of an unplanned life, and the stranger, quieter beauty hiding right behind it. This isn't a pep talk about how everything happens for a reason. I don't actually believe that. Not in the tidy way people mean it. Some things just happen. What I believe is something smaller, and I think more honest, that a life can be unrecognizable from the one you sketched out, and still be yours, still be worth something, still hold moments that the planned version never could have held. That's not a consolation prize. That's a different kind of life. Today, we're going to look at why the gap between the plan and the reality hurts so much, why we keep mourning a life that was only ever a draft, and what it might mean to actually live in the one you've got. Stay with me for the next few minutes, and if any of this lands somewhere true in you, I'd love it if you'd let me know in the comments, or pass this along to someone who's quietly grieving a plan of their own. Let's begin. Here's something I say to clients a lot, usually around the 3rd or 4th session, once they trust me enough to hear it. You didn't actually choose most of that plan. Not really. You inherited it. Most of us built our 5-year plans out of other people's 5-year plans. A parent's idea of stability, a culture's idea of success, the quiet math of what a life is supposed to look like by now. We wrote it down and called it our dream, but a lot of it was just the nearest available template. And that matters, because when the plan doesn't happen, we don't just mourn a future, we mourn a version of ourselves we were told to become. That's a heavier loss than it sounds like, and it deserves to be named as what it is. I had a client, I'll call her Rosa, though that's not her name, who came to me 2 years after a divorce she never planned, in a city she never planned to live in, raising a kid mostly by herself, which was absolutely not on any version of her list. She said something to me I've never forgotten. I keep waiting to feel like my life started over, but it just kept going, without asking me. That's the thing about timelines. We treat them like promises. But a timeline was never a guarantee. It was a coping mechanism. It gave us the illusion that the future was manageable, that if we just did things in the right order, the outcome was ours to control. Underneath every broken plan is a smaller, more painful realization. We were never as in control as the plan let us pretend to be. Can we talk about the word behind for a second? Because I think it's one of the more quietly violent words in the English language, the way we use it against ourselves. Behind whom? Behind what clock? You don't get behind on a life you're the only one living. There's no other you running the timed version, checking her watch, tapping her foot at the finish line, waiting for you to catch up. That version doesn't exist anywhere except in your head. And yet so many of us organize entire decades of self-worth around outrunning a ghost that was never real to begin with. I'll be honest, I have caught myself doing this. Standing in a grocery store parking lot at 40-something, watching someone 20 years younger get into a car with a toddler seat and a wedding ring, feeling that little internal jolt, behind. It's automatic. It doesn't mean it's true. Here's a clinical truth that surprises people. Your nervous system grieves a future the same way it grieves a person. It doesn't distinguish between, I lost someone I loved, and I lost the life I thought I'd have with them. Both register as loss. Both need to move through you, not around you. So if you've been feeling a low hum of sadness about a life that simply didn't turn out, and you've been telling yourself you have no right to grieve something that never technically existed, I want to gently push back on that. You're allowed to grieve a future. It was real to you. You built rooms in it. You furnished them. Losing that is not nothing. You keep comparing your actual life to a life that never had to survive anything. A client of mine said something like that to me once, in a slightly different context. She flipped the question back on me mid-session, the way clients sometimes do, and I sat with it for days afterward. She was right. The planned life never has to survive a Tuesday. It never gets tired. It never gets betrayed or sick or laid off or humbled. It's frictionless because it's fictional. Of course it looks better. It never had to actually happen. The life you're living had to survive real things. That's not a mark against it. I was supposed to be a physicist. I want to say that plainly because it still surprises people. I went to MIT to study the order underneath chaos, stars mostly, the math of things staying in their lanes. That was the plan. Grief rerouted me into psychology instead, which if you told 20-year-old me, she would not have believed you. She thought equations were the safer language. But here's what I've come to think, all these years later, sitting across from people in a small office in Portland. The detour is where the actual education happens. The plan teaches you what you wanted. The detour teaches you who you are when the wanting doesn't work out. Those are very different curriculums, and only one of them makes you someone worth knowing. We do this thing, I do it too, where we imagine the other version of our life running somewhere alongside this one, like a shadow track. The one where the marriage worked, the job offer came through, the move never happened. And in our imagination, that other life is always thriving, always happier, always cleaner. But that life doesn't exist. And even if some multiverse version of it did, it would have its own 3 a.m.s, its own quiet disappointments, its own shoebox of unchecked boxes. We only get to imagine the highlight reel of the unplanned life, never its Tuesdays. That's not a fair comparison. It was never a fair comparison, and you're allowed to stop running it. This one might sting a little, so I'll say it gently. Sometimes the plan not happening is the thing that kept you from becoming someone smaller than you are now. I think of the marriage I planned to be safe, that turned into something closer to a cage with good lighting. I think of clients who didn't get the job they were devastated to lose, and 2 years later couldn't imagine having stayed. Not every derailed plan was a tragedy in disguise. Some genuinely were just loss, plain and hard, and I won't pretend otherwise. But some of them, quietly, were protection. It's worth asking, about your own unplanned life, what did this keep you from becoming? So what do we do with all this? The shoebox, the ghost timeline, the ache of behind. I don't think the answer is forcing gratitude onto grief. That never works. It just teaches you to perform peace instead of finding it. What I've seen work in the office and in my own kitchen at midnight is smaller than that. It's noticing, on an ordinary Wednesday, one thing in your actual life that the planned version never would have contained. A friendship that only exists because the first plan collapsed. A skill you only learned because the safe path closed. A version of tenderness in you that only grew because something broke first. You don't have to love that it happened this way. You only have to notice what's actually here. So, the shoebox. I didn't throw it away in the end. I put it back under the tax returns, faded ink and all. Not as a monument to what I failed to become, more like an old photograph of someone I used to be, back when she thought a life could be predicted if you just wrote it neatly enough. The truth is gentler than that, and harder too. Your life was never a plan waiting to be executed. It's something closer to weather. You can prepare for it, dress for it, even shape a little of it, but mostly you live inside what actually arrives. And there is a real, specific beauty available only inside the life that actually happened to you, not the one you sketched at 29 in a font you thought looked responsible.
If today's episode found you somewhere honest, I'd love to hear about your own unplanned life in the comments, what it cost you, and what it gave you that the plan never could have. And if you know someone quietly mourning a 5-year plan that didn't survive contact with real life, this might be a good one to send them. I'm Sarah. Thank you for spending this time with me. This is Breathe and Begin. Take care of yourself out there.